Tonight, the record-smashing coronavirus surges. Arizona, California, Georgia, and Texas hitting staggering new single-day highs. Vice President Pence arriving in Phoenix wearing a mask. California reversing its reopening. Nearly 10,000 new cases there in just 24 hours. And President Trump now saying he's all for masks, but won't make them mandatory. The situation where he says he wears one. Promising news in the race for a vaccine. Encouraging results from the human trial and the critical next step. Facts over fear. What makes someone a super spreader, and how do they infect so many others? President Trump speaking out for the first time on camera about the alleged Russian bounty on U.S. soldiers. He says it's a new hoax. The crackdown in Seattle, the mayor's emergency order, police moving in on protesters occupying several downtown blocks for weeks. The nearly $19 million settlement for some of Harvey Weinstein's accusers, why others are calling it a sellout. For the first time since a special prosecutor was appointed to investigate the death of Elijah McClain in police custody, his father speaking out. And scam alert. Fake websites claiming to sell everything from masks to hand sanitizer. How to protect yourself.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Sick and tired of closures, restrictions, and a virus that won't go away. Americans are confronted tonight with deeply troubling signs of just how hard this country is being hit. The daily tally of new infections breaking records in some states again tonight, and hospitalizations on the rise, too. The West hit particularly hard. Here in California, the governor today turning back the clock on reopening with new restrictions put in place, while neighboring Arizona sees a staggering rate of positive COVID tests. There's a lot to cover tonight. We begin with Miguel Almaguer.
Emerging as one of the nation's most dangerous hotspots, tonight Arizona recording another staggering record, nearly 4,900 new COVID cases in 24 hours. With hospitalizations hitting another historic high, perhaps most alarming, the positivity rate. Nearly 30% of those just tested have the virus. Today, in the middle of Arizona's crisis, the vice president arrived in Phoenix wearing a mask.
And I couldn't be more proud of our nation's response to the coronavirus pandemic.
Retail, restaurants, and malls are still open in Arizona, but the governor did order the closure of bars, nightclubs, and gyms, though some fitness centers are defying the new restrictions.
I think it's kind of inevitable that things are going to get worse.
As the number of infections and fatalities also soars in California, today Governor Newsom reinstated restrictions. Among them, restaurants in 19 counties must close their dining rooms and return to curbside pickup. California, one of the first states to lock down, among at least 18 others, now clamping down again.
Every day I come to work hoping that I can help someone get better, but unfortunately that's not always the case. It's emotional and it takes a toll.
Facing a summer spike of new infections, 14 states recorded new COVID highs in cases this week. More than half the country is seeing a significant increase, including Texas, where the lieutenant governor is now dismissing Dr. Fauci.
He has been wrong every time on every issue. I don't need his advice anymore.
With a frustrated nation growing tired of restrictions and rollbacks, tonight Tommy Macias's family is sharing his story as a cautionary tale. Getting COVID after quarantining, the 51-year-old just attended a party with friends. It was the last time they would see him alive.
He decided he hadn't seen his friends in so long. He thought things were getting better. He thought it was okay, and he decided to go see them. And just so quickly, he was taken from us.
Here in California, the governor's new restrictions are aimed at reducing crowd sizes in tight spaces before the holidays. He says it'll save lives. Lester?
Too many numbers going in the wrong direction tonight. All right, Miguel, thank you. And as the world races to develop a COVID vaccine, promising news this evening. The first results from one major clinical trial. We get more on it now from NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
Tonight, researchers for Pfizer and its German partner say this is as good a result as they could have hoped for. 45 healthy people between the ages of 18 and 55 took part in the trial. 24 were given 2 doses of the vaccine.
24 out of 24 produced both binding antibodies and then, even more importantly, virus neutralizing antibodies.
With only some participants developing brief fevers and muscle pain around the injection. The vaccine instructs the body to make coronavirus antibodies without exposing people to the virus itself.
Do you know at this point how long these antibodies will last in someone's system?
We don't know. So we don't know either after a natural COVID-19 disease and an actual infection with the virus or after immunization how antibodies last yet. Unfortunately, that just takes time.
There are also 2 more trials before possible approval. This was just the first.
Explain to people how hopeful they should be hearing this news. Is this a slam dunk at this point?
I have been doing vaccine research for over 30 years. This is a promising, encouraging first step, but it's not a slam dunk. I've seen many vaccine candidates not be successful that have gotten to this phase.
The remaining 2 trials will be larger, the final phase including a diverse group of 30,000 people in the U.S. and Europe. It will take months monitoring them to determine if those given the vaccine were protected, while those who received the placebo were not.
So it's potentially good news. It doesn't guarantee that this vaccine protects, but it's the kind of thing that we're looking for before we move some of these vaccines into more advanced clinical development.
Pfizer hopes to have approval by the end of the year and says it's ready to make up to 100 million doses by then, if it passes the test. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
All right, let's drill down now on a term we've been hearing a lot more in recent days, super spreaders, someone who infects many people with the virus. In our series, Facts Over Fear, Kristen Dahlgren and how they spread it and how to protect yourself.
After an infected student recently attended graduation in Westchester County, New York, at least 14 people tested positive for COVID-19. Back in March, a choir practice in Washington state led to 53 infections.
The one person spreading coughing, laughing, and causing several people to get infected.
They've come to be known as super spreaders, an infected person who may not be symptomatic, but goes, for example, to a birthday party, passing it to other guests who then can spread it themselves. It's a combination of biology and behavior. Some people are more contagious with what's called a higher viral load, more virus per droplet. And some simply spread it farther by things like talking louder. But they also need to be close enough to others to transmit the virus.
You think about all the respiratory droplets that are going out into the air, and that increases risk of infection.
Today, the government said labs are near capacity in many places, so test results can be delayed, meaning some may be spreading the disease before they find out they're infected. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University recently looked at real-world cell phone data to track social distancing and see how it affected the virus's spread.
Social distancing or reduced mobility was strongly correlated with reductions in transmission.
New York City, where the infection rate has dramatically dropped, showed the most reduction in mobility. While Harris County, Texas, where Houston has been seeing a surge in cases, people's mobility changed the least. In short, experts say social distancing works, especially when combined with masks.
People do have it within their own capabilities, within their own power, to make these decisions, to socially distance, to protect themselves and protect others.
And Minnesota state epidemiologists said they have now seen 300 cases linked to bars across that state. Tonight, Lester, she is urging the public to do its part.
A lot to learn there, Kristen. Thank you. Now the debate over masks. Despite pleas by health officials to wear them, still no consensus among political leaders. As President Trump says he's all for masks, but would he require them? Here's NBC's Sam Brock.
Tonight, President Trump weighing in on requiring masks.
Well, I don't know if you need mandatory because you have many places in the country where people stay very long distance. You talk about social distancing, but I'm all for masks. I think masks are good. I would wear, if I were in a group of people and I was close.
You would wear one?
Oh, I would. Oh, I have. I mean, people have seen me wearing one.
Now, more officials urging mask use to stop the spread of the virus. Georgia's governor on a 2-day plane tour, though so far he's resisted calls to make it a statewide rule.
Practice social distancing, wash your hands, and wear a mask.
That call coming as federal officials issue a warning. Don't buy into these phony cards. Titled Face Mask Exempt, they carry the Department of Justice seal and claim wearing a mask poses a mental and/or physical risk to me.
There is no federal agency endorsing the card. The card has no force of federal law.
U.S. Attorney Matthew Martin says a group calling itself the Freedom to Breathe Agency advertised them on social media.
Given what's going on right now, in the middle of a crisis like this, what is your reaction to someone scheming up a card to avoid having to wear a mask?
Well, my reaction is it's really pathetic because we are in the middle of a crisis. The CDC has recommended that people wear masks.
A woman associated with the Freedom to Breathe Agency wrote in a Facebook post that the cards were a, quote, educational tool and that they've removed the Justice Department seal. Lester?
All right, Sam, thanks very much. President Trump broke his silence today over reports that Russia offered money to Taliban-backed militants to kill U.S. troops, calling those reports a hoax. But Kristen Welker reports the administration's been sending mixed signals.
President Trump speaking out for the first time since reports surfaced that Russia paid bounties to Taliban-backed militants to target U.S. troops, explaining why he says he was not initially briefed.
This didn't rise to the occasion. And from what I hear, and I hear it pretty good, the intelligence people many of them didn't believe it happened at all. I think it's a hoax.
The president, who has now been briefed, pressed on his use of the word hoax.
I agree with the intelligence people. I think, frankly, that many of the intelligence people didn't think it was something that even happened. And if it did happen, the Russians would hear about it.
The White House has maintained the president was not initially briefed, even though some members of Congress were, because of the credibility of the intelligence. But his national security advisor may have muddled that message by saying the administration was preparing options to respond if necessary.
We started an interagency process to look at options so that if the intelligence turned out to be verified, if it could be corroborated, then we'd have options to go to the president with to address the Russian situation.
Democrats tonight demanding answers.
He actually today said it was a hoax. And this is, again, President Trump's unwillingness to stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Top intelligence officials are expected to brief the key congressional leaders from both parties on Capitol Hill tomorrow. Lester.
Kristen Welker tonight. Thanks. Dozens are under arrest in Seattle this evening after the mayor ordered police to clear out several downtown blocks occupied by protesters for weeks. Our Steve Patterson is there. Steve, this has been moving very quickly today.
Lester, protesters held this 6-block area for more than 3 weeks, yet their encampment was dismantled in less than a day. This morning, Mayor Jenny Durkan ordered officers to retake the self-styled Capitol Hill protest zone. There were 30 arrests, but little in the way of violence. CHOP was created when the city ordered officers to abandon the East Precinct on June 8th, protesters declaring it a police-free zone. The mayor has faced intense backlash for not moving in sooner. The police chief had called CHOP lawless and brutal after a series of shootings where 2 teenagers were killed. Tonight, protesters say they plan to march across the city, with police bracing for any sign of retaliation. Lester.
Steve Patterson in Seattle tonight. Thanks. In 60 seconds, Elijah McClain's father speaks out about the death of his son after a violent encounter with police. Back now with the father of Elijah McClain speaking out for the first time since a special prosecutor was appointed to investigate the death of his son in police custody. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
For more than 10 months, Elijah McClain's father says he's been fighting for justice.
He was special, and he is missed.
It's been a long struggle, LaWayne Mosley says, since Aurora officers tackled his son, applied a carotid hold, and later a sedative. McClain would die at the hospital days later, the coroner saying the cause of death was undetermined. An internal police investigation found the officers followed policies, and the district attorney declined to file charges. Only after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis did the governor here appoint a special prosecutor.
If you could speak to the officers who stopped him that night, what would you say?
You're a coward, but you shouldn't be police officers anymore, and we're coming for your job. So.
Now, in a joint statement, the Justice Department and the FBI confirmed they've been reviewing McClain's death for any civil rights violation since 2019. They're also now looking into whether some Aurora officers took potentially inappropriate pictures last week. The police department has placed them on paid administrative leave. McLean was 23 years old, a massage therapist who friends say would constantly bow as a sign of gratitude.
They murdered my friend.
Marna Arnett was one of his clients for more than 2 years.
Nobody should die like this. Nobody should be walking home and be worried that they'll never get there.
The interim police chief in Aurora says her department will cooperate fully with the federal review, but she declined to comment on any ongoing investigations. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. A group of Harvey Weinstein's accusers have reached a tentative settlement, including $19 million for victims. But some of Weinstein's other accusers say it's not nearly enough. Here's Kate Snow with that.
3 months after Harvey Weinstein was sent to prison for rape, the proposed settlement would create a victims fund worth nearly $19 million.
There is relief and closure in this settlement, absolutely, for me, and I think for 100+ women.
If approved by the courts, anyone with an allegation since the late 1980s could file a confidential claim, and accusers are released from any non-disclosure agreements. Actresses Louisette Geis and Caitlin Delaney were part of a class action lawsuit against Weinstein and others.
This never would have happened had we not really linked arms and made it happen. We're opening this door. So, may it be bigger and better for the next women who come after us.
But other Weinstein accusers call the settlement a sellout. Weinstein's former assistant, Rowena Chu, accused him of attempted rape. She's frustrated Weinstein will not admit any wrongdoing, and he won't be the one footing the bill. Instead, insurance companies will make this payout and nothing further.
It removes a lot of individual choice from survivors. So if they wanted to litigate their own claims in court against Harvey, they wouldn't be able to.
Those supporting the settlement say they did the best they could within an unfair system.
There's never enough, right? I mean, there really is no amount of money that can take away what transpired to all of these survivors.
Weinstein remains in a Buffalo prison and still faces separate sex crimes charges in Los Angeles. He has repeatedly denied allegations of non-consensual sex. An attorney for Weinstein telling NBC News, with closure in sight on one front, Mr. Weinstein remains intently focused in defending himself on all remaining legal matters. As for how much individual accusers could receive, it depends on how many apply. Kate Snow, NBC News.
Coming up, buyer beware when hard-to-find cleaning items suddenly become available online. Now to a warning about an online scam. Phony ads for COVID supplies, everything from masks to hand sanitizer. Here's Vicki Wynn.
The ad on Facebook was actually really excellent.
When firefighter Jordan Hilfiger came across an ad for hard-to-find N95 masks, he clicked on it, placing an order for $100 worth of masks and filters for his family. But 2 months and multiple emails later, the masks never arrived.
The fact that there's people out there that are doing this to, any kind of everyday civilian, it's just not right to do it to people.
We're seeing a really dramatic spike in these complaints.
Monica Vaca is with the Federal Trade Commission. The agency says it received more than 34,000 online shopping complaints in April and May, the highest of any months on record, with more than half saying they never received what they ordered. Face masks, sanitizer, toilet paper, and thermometers top the list of no-shows. Unscrupulous sellers using the pandemic as pretext for shipping delays, then vanishing. A scheme to stall people from posting negative reviews or reporting the fraud.
Could the government be doing more to help stop these scammers, or is it really up to consumers to be smart shoppers?
So it's important that both the government and consumers are working on this.
She says before buying from an unfamiliar site, enter the name of that online store and the word scam or complaint, and use a service like Google Maps to confirm the seller's physical address and phone number. And always report scams to ftc.gov/complaint.
The FTC says never use a peer-to-peer payment system like Venmo or a debit card for your online purchases. Always use a credit card because it offers fraud protection. Lester?
Yeah, important advice there, Vicki. Thanks very much. Up next for us tonight in this time of need, the power of a handwritten letter. Finally, the sisters who created a movement spreading comfort and joy. Here's Rahema Ellis.
It's a letter-writing campaign like no other.
We have over 2,100 volunteers who have sent over 18,000 letters and cards. We serve right now over 4,000 seniors from around the U.S.
It's called Letters Against Isolation, started in April by Boston sisters, 16 and 18-year-old Shafan and Sharia Patel. They came up with the idea after seeing how much letters meant to their grandmother in England.
This act of writing a letter, it makes the most enormous impact on the people who receive them.
The letters a delight for Jim.
Oh, I love them.
And a flashback for Florence, reminded of letters from an old boyfriend.
And I should have kept it. And it's just so lovely to have this community during these lonely times.
While you're spreading some joy, you're also getting some joy.
Yeah, definitely.
And old-fashioned connection finding new meaning in a modern time. Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
What a great effort. That is Nightly News for this evening. I'm Lester Holt. Thanks for watching. Please take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.